All right, let's jump into the material you sent over. It's all focused on Ethereum, what's happening right now in the market.
Yeah, quite a bit to look at.
We've got a few different angles here, and I think the idea is just to pull out the main takeaways, what really stands out from this current picture.
Exactly. And the starting point seems to be Ethereum is showing some real resilience lately. It's quite noticeable.
Okay, resilience. Let's start there. One of the first things mentioned is how Ethereum held up over, what was it, $2,600?
Mm-hmm. $2,600.
When Bitcoin dipped pretty hard. Why is that separation, that holding the line, why is that important?
Well, usually, when Bitcoin corrects, everything else kind of follows.
Right.
So for Ethereum to just hold that floor, especially a level like $2,600, it suggests something specific might be boosting it, or just, real underlying strength. It managed to decouple, at least for that moment.
Yep.
Definitely something worth noting.
And zooming in on the chart analysis they provided, it says Ethereum's mostly trading sideways day to day, but it's like testing the upper boundary.
Yeah, exactly.
They talk about the 50% Fibonacci retracement levels specifically, around $2,699 as key resistance.
That's the one. And for anyone maybe not super familiar with charting, those Fibonacci levels, they're basically technical markers.
Right, based on past moves.
Yeah, ratios traders watch for support or resistance.
Yeah.
So that $2,699 level, the 50% one, is seen here as a pretty significant hurdle.
So getting past that would be a good sign.
A strong move past it could suggest, more room to climb. The sources then point to the next big resistance zone being near the 61.8% fib level.
Which lines up with $3,000, right? That big psychological number.
Precisely. Hits close to that $3,000 mark.
Okay, this is interesting. The technical indicators they mentioned seem to back up that potential for upward movement. The super trend indicator, for example, still showing an uptrend.
Correct. And the RSI, the Relative Strength Index.
Yeah.
That measures price momentum. It's hovering up near the overbought area.
Which sounds potentially negative, like it's due for a drop.
Well, sometimes yes, but in isolation, it can be misleading. The sources discuss it in the context of like a strong market trend, where the RSI can actually stay elevated for a while. It doesn't have to mean an immediate reversal. It can just signal that, the bullish momentum is really strong right now.
Got it. So price holding strong, technicals looking potentially positive according to this analysis. What else is feeding into this generally optimistic view we're seeing here?
A really big piece highlighted is the institutional support. It's been significant and consistent.
Okay.
The sources point to this steady flow of money into Ethereum ETFs, exchange-traded funds.
Right.
They call out one specific day, May 29th, where these funds saw net inflows of just over $91.9 million.
Wow, nearly $92 million in one day. Just into those specific Ethereum products.
Yeah. And that wasn't just a one-off. That day actually marked the 9th straight day, according to the sources, of positive inflows. This kind of consistent buying.
Adds up quickly.
It really does. It brought the total net assets in these Ethereum ETFs up to $9.63 billion. Pretty substantial.
That kind of steady buying from big players, institutions. The sources mentioned BlackRock and Fidelity were big on that particular day. That feels different from just like daily market noise. It suggests maybe a deeper, longer-term confidence building from a whole different type of investor.
It certainly points towards growing conviction, yeah. This isn't just quick trades, it's larger investment decisions. It adds a different kind of support to the market structure they're describing.
And that fits with what the analysts are saying in these materials, right?
Yeah.
They seem pretty optimistic based on these signals.
They do. One analyst is quoted saying, look, maybe a small pullback could have happened after breaking past $2,400 initially.
Okay.
But they're sticking with an upside target of $3,000 as the next key point based on how things look now.
And beyond that.
Looking further out, the sources mention some estimates even pushing towards $4,000 if the overall bullish conditions hold up.
Okay, so combining the price action, the technicals, this institutional money flow, the sentiment among some experts is definitely leaning bullish here. But what about derivatives? Sometimes that market tells a slightly different story, right? More complex.
That's a good point, and the sources do touch on that. They say, yes, the potential for a breakout seems there, but there was some short-term volatility recently that caused a bit of a spike in, what you might call bearish signs in derivatives.
How so?
On one recent day, Ethereum's open interest, that's basically the total number of open derivative contracts. It was down slightly. And importantly, they saw a big surge in long liquidations compared to short liquidations.
Okay, long liquidations.
Okay.
For listeners, that means people betting on prices going up got forced out of their positions.
Exactly that. Leveraged traders betting on higher prices got stopped out automatically when the price dipped, so it cleared out some of those bullish bets, specifically in the leveraged part of the market.
Yeah.
However, the sources also note that even after that shakeout, the funding rate stayed elevated.
And a high funding rate usually means?
In these perpetual futures markets, it means the traders who are still holding long positions, betting on price increases.
Yeah.
They're still paying a premium to the traders holding short positions. So even after some longs got flushed out, the ones remaining are willing to pay extra to keep their bullish bets open.
Interesting.
The sources seem to interpret that as a sign that bullish sentiment is still lingering underneath, even with that temporary volatility spike.
Okay, so even with that little hiccup in derivatives, the bigger picture painted here, price holding up, bullish technicals, the steady institutional cash, analyst targets, it all seems to point towards a pretty positive outlook for Ethereum right now, with $3,000 being that major level everyone's watching.
Yeah, that really sums up the narrative coming through. Ethereum's showing strength, it's pulling in serious institutional money, and the technicals and fundamentals discussed here suggest, potential for more upside. And yes, $3,000 is definitely highlighted as the key benchmark to watch.
So just to quickly run through what we covered, Ethereum's price holding that crucial $2,600 level despite broader market dips. Then the technical signals like super trend and RSI, which the sources suggest point towards potential gains. Then that really clear evidence of institutional buying through those big, consistent ETF inflows.
Right, the 9 straight days.
And finally, the analysts eyeing higher targets, like $3,000 and maybe even $4,000. Plus that quick look at derivatives showing some volatility, but maybe still an underlying bullish feel with the funding rate.
And seeing all those pieces together, the price chart itself, the technical indicators traders use, where the big money is flowing, and the overall sentiment, it really does give you a much fuller sense of what's going on.
Yeah, you see how these different things interact rather than just looking at one number.
Exactly. It helps you understand the dynamics in the market you're watching.
Okay, so maybe a final thought to leave people with. Given this resilience we're seeing in Ethereum and this growing institutional hug, essentially, what might this moment mean for Ethereum's story compared to other major cryptos like Bitcoin or maybe even others the sources touched on like XRP or Solana? And, the big question, what actually happens if Ethereum does break through and hold that $3,000 level everyone's talking about?
Good questions. Definitely something to keep an eye on and think about.